Welcome to another episode of Krazy Train with Jasmine St. Clair. Oh, I am so excited for today's guest because he's been so hard to get on the show. Like before I came back to XPW Wrestling, I was trying to get an interview with Necrobutcher. Now he's a legend to me, and it's like you don't see any real trace of him on social media. I mean, for crying out loud, the guy deserves like a shirt. And I don't know why like Ringside Wrestling Tees hasn't jumped on that ship to at least make a shirt for him. Might be something to do because I'd wear it. This guy is just an all around badass. And I really mean that. I think part of his story sort of insinuates that he might have been the one that somehow contributed to the whole concept slash term backyard wrestling before it was backyard wrestling. Anyway, that's enough. I just think it's time to bring him on. Let's welcome to the show, Necrobutcher. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to do this. I know I've been like trying to make this happen, and all the fans are asking about Necrobutcher. So it's interesting. How did you even come up with a name like Necrobutcher? Can you
Well,
hear
I
me?
didn't. Uh, can you hear me okay?
Oh, I can hear you fine.
Oh, no, I can't. Okay.
Yeah.
Actually, I didn't. When I started wrestling, I was in the military, and this was in Dallas, Texas. And of course, they gave me a military type army character, which I didn't like at all. And there was no escape. I was doing the same thing in wrestling as I was doing every day at work. I didn't like it at all. And it was a different time back then. You didn't really pick what your name was or what moves you did, even, or and you didn't pick. You just did what you were told, no matter what. I remember I was talking to the guys that ran the show, and I said, "Look, anything that comes up, it's a cowboy, a pirate, a ballerina, anything, anything, I'll do it." And at the time, I was using my real name. I was Private Dylan Summers was my wrestling name. And they said, "Give us a couple weeks and we'll come up with something new." And a couple weeks went by, and they said, "All right, your new wrestling name is going to be Private Dylan Sanders." So it's like their way of saying, "Shut up, do what you're told." And then this was before there was such a term as backyard wrestling. There was some kids in Fort Worth, and they used to rent Johnny Valentine's ring. Like Johnny Valentine would come set the ring up in these kids' yard, and then at a certain point in time, he'd come pick it up. And they had like birthday parties or whatnot, just kids. Well, one time Johnny Valentine got sick and never came got the ring for 8 months. He didn't come get the ring. So what do kids do with a wrestling ring in their backyard? They started running wrestling shows. I can remember Red Dog and Jazz wrestled there. Brian Nielsen wrestled under a mask. He was the American Dragon. Spanky wrestled there. Like these, they would, the local the NWA show was on a Friday night, and these guys would run shows in this backyard on Saturday morning. So a lot of guys that were in town for the NWA would stay over to make extra money at this, what was now soon be known as a backyard show. And a guy who I was wrestling with wanted me to come down. It was their idea. They said it's something different than the army gimmick, and I just jumped. At the time I was wrestling maybe once every couple months. And this was something more. It was never supposed to go anywhere. It was the Necrobutcher character was just supposed to be ring time for Private Dylan Summers. Just being in front of a crowd, doing something besides training in the barn all the time in this ring. So it was just about ring time, and this is when the backyard wrestling thing was just starting to get noticed, and local news affiliate came to the show to watch this backyard wrestling show. Well, then of course the NWA promoter in Texas had saw this news broadcast and just It's like the proverbial snowball down the hill. Things got bigger and bigger and bigger, and then pretty soon no one was calling that Private Dylan Sanders guy to come wrestle their show. They were all calling this Necrobutcher guy. So it just did, had a life of its own. Wasn't even a planned thing, but now here we are, almost 25, 30 years later. So some decisions in life are ones that are made for you, you know.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And you said a few interesting things there. So, first of all, how long were you in the Army for, and what did you do besides butchering people, possibly? But
in the military.
the military, sorry. Yeah, how long were you?
Oh yeah, sorry.
That's okay.
Uh, well, I was in from just 4 years. Just 4 years. It wasn't something I thought would be fun, but this was back when minimum wage was a whopping 4.25 an hour, and I had a wife and 2 kids, and she was pregnant. And for 4.25 an hour, you really had to work a lot of hours. You'd have to work 60, 70, 80 hours to get $100, $120. You really had to work, and it just wasn't meeting the bills. And I tried a few things, and nothing would really give me the hours that I needed because minimum wage was so low. This was a very, very small town in West Virginia. You know, and the Army's always hiring, so that's what I did. It wasn't something. It wasn't ever, other than playing as a child. It was not something I intended to do as an adult at all. I was just, trying to take care of the kids. My official job was cannon crewman, but I did a lot of other things. That was my official job title.
Huh, interesting. I mean, I have a lot of respect for vets, so thanks for your service. Even though you didn't want to be there, like anytime I see military guys at the airport, I always stop them. Sometimes I take a photo, but I always thank them for their service because it's important. It's a very brutal thing. I have friends that were affected by
Oh
PTSD,
yeah,
and it's a serious thing. So this is why when young kids say I'm traumatized or PTSD, you don't know what the hell PTSD is until
no,
you've been in that zone. And half of them are so freaking lazy they don't even want to get up their asses and go enlist in the military. You want a free education? That's how you get it.
yeah, yeah.
Anyway, okay, I'm on my rants now. Okay, so
Your podcast.
yeah, I'm serious. But with the did you even get wrestling training, or were you just trained in this backyard where you were doing things? Did you like teach each other things? Because I hear so many different stories about people's training, and everyone has a different one. Yours has got to be
Oh,
interesting. That's what I know.
okay. With the wrestling. Okay. At this point, I was living in Texas, and I'm this poor country boy, but the Army was a lot of money for me. So what does a country boy do but buy toys? So I bought a big satellite dish to put it in my yard. This was before you DirecTV, Dish Network, that kind of stuff, where satellite TV was this great big thing in your yard, that rotated, and I could watch all kinds of wrestling doing this. I was watching, stuff from Memphis. I was watching stuff, from Continental Wrestling. There was like 9 hours a week of Mexican wrestling on there. There was all kind of stuff, and I got to trading tapes with kid, VHSs and stuff. I'd get Japanese tapes and old Madison Square Garden tapes and all that kind of stuff. And I was getting weekly All Japan TV, New Japan TV, and I began selling tapes to guys that were training in Dallas, because they wanted to see the Japanese style and the moves. And just through constantly communicating with these gentlemen in Dallas, they said, "Hey, you should come up and try out." It was at the Sportatorium in Dallas, is where I went for my tryout. And the Army was paying the bills. I had no intention of this. I had no idea wrestling would even work out. It was a lot different then. Back then, you gave them a bunch of money up front, and they beat you up, and that was it. And you left, but they had money. It's now. It's back where that Cali will string you along for payments, 4 or 5 months, and to say you're a wrestler when all they really did was take it easy on you to keep steady paychecks coming in, smaller checks. So I went up there, and I think it was $2,500 down. I had to give them before I even walked in the building. $2,500, you know, and of course they beat the hell out of me. Of course they did. But at the end of the day, they asked me a question I was completely unprepared for, and they were laughing when they said it. They said, "Well, are you coming back next week, Dylan?" And I said, "Well, sure." You know, I didn't think that was an option. I thought the beating was to tell me to not come back, but I just said in my head that I'm just going to keep coming back until they tell me not to come back. And they never did. And then again, I say, here we are 30 years later.
Isn't it crazy? I mean, especially with death matches, like fans that do watch XPW, you people are fucking sick. You're like sicker than I am in the head. And trust me, when I go, I go. But you people are out of your minds because you watch other people like beat the shit out of each other because there are a lot of fans that sit there that probably want to be like in your seat or in your stand, I guess, wherever your feet are in the ring. And it'll never happen because they're two chickens. So it takes a lot of courage to do what you're doing. Now, the producer of my podcast watched part of the XPW show and he felt really concerned for you. I know. It's like, I don't know. Then you have girls like Minnie Knuckles going in there, like those girls are brutal. Did you ever think in your wildest dreams or in your younger version of yourself that you would still be doing this after all these years? It's insane.
No, no. And I didn't start out like this in Texas. Wrestling wasn't like this in Texas when I started. But the best place to make money in Texas at that time was Houston. Houston had the biggest crowds, but Dallas had TV. And after a few years, I was doing main events in Dallas and Houston, and I thought, okay, well, what's next? Is this the end of it? Is this as far as I can go? And I thought, no, I want to try. You know, there's stuff on the East Coast, the Midwest. So I sent tapes out to people. You know, back then you had to send a VHS. You'd send a VHS with, you know, what you thought were your three best matches. You know, you send it out, and that's how you went to a new place. Now you can just send them a link. There's YouTube. You don't got to send anybody anything anymore. But it was a lot different then. And I went to a place in the Midwest. I went to IWA Mid South. They were like in Louisville, Kentucky, around that area.
I wrestled there
And
once.
I was always in the okay. I was always in the opening match, not making a lot of money, but it was, you know, I was working my way up, and I would see the guys in the main event doing these what later we call death matches. There wasn't even a word for them back then. They was that style of wrestling. Death match. The word death match came later, you know. But I'd see these guys and they were in the main event and they're making money, and I thought, well, okay, this is where I'm at. If I want to be successful and be serious about this, I have to get in there and, you know, try my best against the best guys where I'm at. And like I said, sometimes the best decisions are ones that you don't make. They're made for you. I was not trying to be a deathmatch wrestler per se, but I wanted to be a main event guy, and that's where I was. So that's what I did.
Yeah, it's amazing. I have a lot of respect for that. For any guy that steps in the ring or woman that does that. I mean, because I think every girl in that show that's wrestling for XPW has gigged at some point. And I miss sending in tapes. Like I remember sending in VHS tapes when I was at XPW. I remember sending them into like WCW, WWF, like all. But I ended up in ECW, which was like way cooler. Like I could say I was a part of that. I mean, who'd want to work with like that? That's so boring. Did you ever have aspirations of wanting to work for Vince McMahon or something like that?
Well, I went to a couple. I was an extra a couple of times, and I guess it was 98 or 99. They used to have a show called, I think it was a Shotgun Saturday Night or something like that. And they called me, and I went there. I think I went 3 times. The first 2 times, they didn't use anybody at all. They called 4 guys, and they said, "We're here in case we need you, but we're not doing anything with you." And then like the third day, they used 2 of us, but we all still got paid the same whether we wrestled or not. But really, that was, you know, and I kind of had a kind of defining moment in my life happened at these WWF. These back it was WWF, but uh, I was real good friends with Sean Hernandez. He was Stuff Hernandez was his wrestling name. I think he's with Homicide now, the tag team. But we used to travel together a lot. And on the show where they used two guys and didn't use two guys, he was one of the two they used. I think he wrestled Crash Holly, I think, on that one. And I guess Kevin Kelly was talking to Hernandez, and he said, "What's with that guy with all the giggles on his head? He's kind of scary." And I really didn't have my head wasn't all cut up back then. This was 20 some years ago, and I thought about it, and I thought, well, if my head is too cut up now, if that's what's going to prevent me from coming here, then I need to embrace what I have going on. If they think I'm this scary monster now, then I'm just going to be that scary monster. I'm going to be in the matches with the chairs and the blood and all that. And it was just reacting to the situation I was in.
Yeah, it's a very interesting one indeed. I mean, I never thought that I'd find myself back at XPW after all these years, but you just never know. I love Rob now. I love being there and just seeing the progression of women's wrestling. What are your thoughts on, actually, a few things. First of all, I keep looking in your background. We'll talk about that after, but what are the thoughts that you have on women's wrestling now with these girls getting brutal? I mean, they're amazing.
Boy, it's and I've known these girls for a long time, both Nikki and Lou Dark. I've known those girls since they were like 17. Yeah, and I've watched all this. Part of me is like about watching it, but part of me is also concerned for them because some of the things they do are just very, very dangerous. But I mean, it's what that's what the guys are doing in the main event, so that's what the girls are going to be doing too.
Yeah, but like Minnie Knuckles, she's scared. I mean, I was very scared for her. I mean, those girls like her and Sage Sand, it's just, she reminds, I'll tell you what Mickey reminds me of. She reminds me of our version of Abby the Butcher, for sure.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
he's something else.
He
I worked with him
embraces
many
that.
times, and he's one of the nicest people. And it was just really, I remember working on an indie show with him, and there was some kid who was really green in the dressing room. He plays peekaboo with the Iron Sheik. And you don't do that to the Iron Sheik. And the same time, I think he was in a match with Abby. And I remember after the match was over, Abby was like telling him, "You have to do this." Like he told him, and the kid just seemed like it was going like in one ear, out the other. So I pulled him aside, even though I was sort of new myself. I said, "These guys are old school. Like, you don't know what you're getting. You have to respect what they're saying." And nobody walks up to the Sheik and puts their eyes on him and goes, "Peekaboo." You just don't do that type of shit. Um, what would you say? Is there anywhere you'd like to work that you haven't worked? Because I feel like you've been everywhere. Were you in CCW, right? Back then?
Well, for a good while.
Yeah, I thought
Yeah,
so.
for a good while. And then like when you guys started your stuff in Philly, I moved to Texas pretty well right away. So I was kind of gone, right when you started your stuff. But it was around the same time frame. That was when I was in CCW for a while. Yeah, like because they have, I think next month they're having their big tournament of death, and they're making a big deal about this being the 20th anniversary of the tournament of death. And I thought, Christ, I was in like the first 3 or 4 of those, So it's really weird.
Yeah,
I'm
where are
just,
you going?
I was I'm entering the tournament. I'll be there. It's the 29th of October. Yeah, I'm in the death tournament. Trying again. Yeah, yeah. For a while I was in a hospital bed. I got really sick. I thought wrestling was over a long time ago. I had a girlfriend. I was trying to have a normal life, regular job and all that. And then I got sick, and I got really, really sick. I was down to about 160. Ended up with I got all for stage 3 is all the further it got. And then just as quick as I got sick, I got better. And I thought, well, what I saw some of the stuff going on, the guys doing it now, and I thought, I can do that, So just taking it like second chance, to kind of appreciate it more.
Be careful. Maybe I just watched Rocky like too many times. But I've never been to a CZW show. I thought Zandig was hot like a long time ago. I don't know what he looks like now. I'll have to, maybe I'll go check out the show. I don't know.
Same, only older.
He what? He looks like Van
The
Wilder?
same, only older.
Well, does he have like
The same, only older.
Does he have a beer belly? Did he put on weight? Does he look
Slightly?
good?
It's a little bit.
Is he
A
balding?
little bit. A little bit.
Oh, okay. No, never mind.
He looks the same. He looks the same.
Yeah, maybe not. I don't know. But yeah, I used to watch those shows and I'd get squeamish around that. And then to come into this, like the first XPW show back, we have a deathmatch tournament. I'm like, okay, well, this will be okay. Next thing I see like shower doors. I see everything else. It's like, what are these people gonna do next? You know? Where do you think you've actually worked where you felt, which match, let me rephrase this, which match do you feel might have been your most holy shit moment where I don't know if I'm going to pull out of this one or maybe I just won't do this again? Has there ever been that moment in your career? Because I'm sure everyone's had it.
There's been a few rough ones, but that's the thing with when you're dealing with glass and things like that. You can't predict what's going to happen. And you might be lucky for a good while, but sooner or later your luck does run out, and you can get seriously injured really quick. And I've had a few injuries, but obviously not enough to scare me away yet. So.
I get scared every time I see you go in the ring, like you, Schlack, everyone else. And the last time, like, I swear everyone's asking to bring weapons to the next XPW match. No, you need to bring a handheld vacuum for the ring crew. I had a shard of glass in my back when I got up. Like, that was not fun, but it's always a risk when you go in there. What do you think you would be doing if you weren't wrestling? Would you maybe be a baseball player or a politician or something cool like that?
I've worked baseball for a few years. Currently the public address announcer for a minor league team up here, the Mechanicsburg Cardinals up here in Mechanicsburg, PA. I've done grounds crew for a few years in Dayton, Ohio, for the Dayton Dragons. I was a ticket taker at the gate for a season. It's really strange because I worked on the grounds crew for I think 17 and 18, and then I started getting sick, so they moved me to taking tickets, and then I got too sick to do that. So then in February of 20, I resigned from the team. I said, "Look, I'm too sick. I can't work." And then I think it was maybe March of 2020, they canceled minor league baseball anyway. So all of minor league baseball was canceled. The same time I got sick, the whole country got sick, just a different way. So I don't know. I enjoy being around baseball, but a lot of that's because I'm not any good at it. I'm a good fan. I'm a better fan than a player.
Isn't it crazy how that works out? I like baseball too. I grew up watching the Yankees and stuff like that. I don't want to play like softball or anything like that, or I'm just really bad at baseball. I'm good at wrestling. Then I'm good at I'm good at other things, but just not that. Did you, like, when you were a kid? And when I say kid, I'm not talking our 20s. I'm saying younger. What did you actually want to be? Like, when you go back to your much younger version of yourself, like, what did you really want?
Honestly, I wanted to be a commentator. I was a small kid, and this whole there were guys under 200 pounds back then. If you were under 200 pounds, you were a referee. There was, now you have guys wrestling like 150, 160, and it's common, but it wasn't common back then. So I tried to learn the moves and the history of these guys and the places they'd been in the championships, and I became like a wrestling nerd, because I wanted to be a commentator. So I thought I had a potential at that. That's really what I was trying to do. Probably like high school age. Like in high school, I was still entertaining these thoughts of being a wrestling commentator in high school.
Well, you never know. Maybe it's, never too late. I see a lot of people a lot of wrestlers that are now commentating and so forth. So you never know.
Yeah.
I pray for you every time you go out there, and that's the truth. Um, So where would do you ever anticipate this would be a great way to make a living is just doing wrestling and then do you do signings at all? Do you do appearances? And if you do, what's the weirdest thing a fan has ever done or given you as a gift?
Uh, I did a couple of those. It just makes me feel weird. Like if someone sees me at a show, sure, I'll sign something for you. But I just never, I did one of those signing things and I felt really weird. And the promoter said, "Oh, don't worry, you'll get the hang of it." So I did another one and I felt worse.
Why?
I've only done two. I just feel weird, that's not who I am. I never, I just want people to watch me wrestle. Be entertained by my match. And if you see me somewhere, sure, I'll take a picture. I'll sign something. We'll have a beer together, or whatever you want. But I'm just not a big social guy like people might think. I don't like to be in the ring. I'm kind of in control of what's going on. Nothing's going to happen in the ring that I don't want to happen. But when I'm sitting at a table and all these people could come up, they could come up and they could ask me questions. It's intimidating to me. I can't do it.
Really? But you could ask someone for
Yeah.
a chair, right? Then like a million chairs come flying into the ring, right?
Well, yeah, that's happened a few times.
I hope you're enjoying the ride on Krazy Train with Jasmine St. Clair podcast. So if you are, do me a huge, huge favor. Woo! Please go ahead. Go on to Apple Podcast or Spotify or whatever, but Apple's great. Give me a nice rating and review. Send me a screenshot, and I promise you, I will send you a special goodie bag. So please rate and review Krazy Train with Jasmine St. Clair podcast. And in exchange for that, once I see the DM with the review and your name and address, I will get those gift bags out to you. I'm not going to tell you what's in it.